The DNA test came back, and the man I married wasn't my son's father. That sentence hit like a truck. I read it on the lab secure portal, fingers trembling so hard I almost dropped my phone. Not the kind of sentence you hear in whispers. Not the kind you can put back in the box and pretend it never happened. My son's name is Leo. He was 5. I had married Michael when Leo was 6 months old. We built a life fast because we both wanted a family. Michael changed diapers at 3 a.m., learned the words to Leo's favorite silly songs, and told me every morning I was a better mother than I felt like. He was the kind of man who made promises and meant them. That made this worse. It started 3 weeks earlier with a fight so stupid I can still replay it like a bad song. He accused me of hiding things, called me evasive, said Leo's hazel eyes didn't match my blue and his brown. He went through our wedding photos and compared noses like a detective. He said he just wanted to know the truth because he couldn't sleep. He asked for a paternity test like it was a small thing. I hated the idea. I had reasons I hadn't told him, small embarrassing ones that felt like mine to carry. But I wanted him to stop waking up at dawn and staring at Leo with that suspicion in his face. I agreed to the test to give him peace, to get back to ordinary mornings, pancakes, and the stupid songs. The call from the lab came 2 days later. I answered with the confidence of someone about to hand over a proof of purchase receipt. The woman said results were ready. I clicked the link and scrolled until the letters blurred. Then I saw it. Paternity excluded. Probability of paternity, 0%. Stupid, numb things happened after that. Michael left the kitchen, slammed the door so hard I flinched. He went to the garage. He came back with a paper towel and cleaned a spot on the counter, like committing small domestic acts would stop the world from spinning. You need to know who the father is, he said later, voice flat. Not mad, just tired. The absolute worst kind of tired. I couldn't meet his eyes. I didn't have an answer. I had a foggy, blurry memory of a night 6 years ago, one too many drinks, one bad decision, a man I'd known in college who showed up and asked me if I was okay. I had told myself grief and hormones and sleep deprivation after Leo's birth made me vulnerable. I had told myself I was a different person now. I had told myself the past had stayed in the past. I had told myself a lot of things to avoid this moment. I called my sister Emma. She drove over with coffee and sat on the floor with Leo while Michael paced and I sat on the counter like a trapped animal. You have to tell him, Emma said, but she sounded frightened more than firm. You have to tell the truth before he cracks it out of you and it becomes worse. So I told him everything I could remember. I told him about that night at the dive bar, about a man named Ben who'd kissed me at the end of a terrible year, about how I thought Leo was a miracle and maybe I'd been too scared to risk telling the man because I was still raw. I didn't say it like an apology. I said it like a confession that needed a lock on it. Michael listened. He put Leo in his car seat and took him to the park to clear his head. He came back and said he needed space. He packed a bag and took the truck. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He shut a door, and in that silence I felt a funeral go by. Everything changed. His parents called to ask what he planned to do. My parents asked if they could come over. Rumors started. Because they're people, and that's what people do when something confusing bangs against their porch. A coworker asked Michael if we were okay and then had to pretend he hadn't just asked. Someone took a picture of Leo at the playground and someone else commented how brave I was for facing my past. Social media fractured my personal life into snapshots I didn't authorize. A week later, Ben texted me. He had seen the news, he said. He wanted to know if he was the father. If he was, he wanted to be part of Leo's life. His words were clumsy and terrified and probably true. Then he sent a picture, an old selfie with me on a summer day, like what I needed was photographic proof of my own mistakes. I panicked. I called a lawyer, because that is how the world works now. Truth goes public, and lawyers shape its edges. My lawyer said the law usually treats the man on the birth certificate as the legal father if the mother is married. That meant Michael had rights even if paternity was excluded biologically. He could seek custody, he could fight for visitation, and the court would probably favor continuity for Leo. The lawyer leaned back and said quietly, "It won't be a clean break for anyone." I sat in the parking lot of the county library with Leo asleep in the back seat and realized my choices had consequences that extended past me into a small body that had no vote. I went home and took off my wedding ring and put it in a box. It was a symbolic death. My marriage still existed on a form, in a house with a toothbrush in the same cup, but something essential had died in both of us. The chaos accelerated. Michael's mother showed up in my driveway with casserole and a foil pan and eyes like broken glass. She asked me how long I'd known. She said she loved Michael and wasn't sure she could love me anymore. She left the casserole on the porch and didn't come inside. Michael texted me that he was filing papers to begin separation and custody next week. He said he couldn't live with that level of uncertainty. He wanted to protect Leo from the lie. He thought the lie had been mine. Our neighbor, who had never liked me, said in the stairwell that men need to know the truth about their kids. Another neighbor circled back and said the important thing was Leo's safety, not titles. In the rage-laden blur, Ben kept messaging. At first he was eager and pleading, then he cooled. He said he needed a test to be sure. I agreed. I hoped he'd be the answer I could live with. I wanted some adult in Leo's life to be a stable shore instead of two fractured mirrors. The test with Ben matched. The lab confirmed what I had feared and what I had secretly wanted in the same breath. Ben was Leo's biological father. Ben called the day the results came in. He said he had been scared typing my name into a search engine and finding this mess. He said he had a long drive downstate for work next week and he wanted to meet Leo. Maybe for lunch, maybe just to show him a face. He asked if we could arrange something supervised. His voice broke in the way of someone who's been running from the truth and suddenly isn't. Michael heard about the Ben result through friends, because friends were still friends and didn't know how to be discreet. He came over that night and sat at the end of the kitchen table like a man who'd been cut and couldn't see the wound. "So he's the father," Michael said. He sounded hollow. "Yes," I said. I told him I had the lab report. I told him Ben had agreed to a meeting. Michael said nothing for a long time. Then he stood up and slammed his fist onto the table, the sound of a door slamming without upward air. He yelled that he had been a father to Leo, that he had loved Leo like a son, moved across the world for the job that let him be more present, paid for the crib, learned the names of obscure dinosaurs. He said he wasn't the biological father, but he had acted like one when it counted. The argument that followed made us both strangers. Michael said he wanted legal custody. He wanted visitation. He wanted time, not because he liked the idea of paternity as a trophy, but because he had been parent in practice. I begged him not to use Leo as a chess piece. He said he wasn't trying to punish me, he was trying to survive. He left that night, and I watched him drive away like a man who'd been sentenced. At my lowest, I sat on the kitchen floor, Leo, asleep on my chest, and felt every identity I had paid for collapse. I had wanted marriage like oxygen and then used someone else's love without telling him all the angles. I wasn't a bad person in the cartoon sense, but I had been cowardly, and cowards create collateral. I called Sarah, my friend, and the one who had shown up at my door when Leo was born and when my mother had surgery. She came over with pizza and no questions and a patience that felt like armor. We wrote a plan. We found a family lawyer who wouldn't scream and who would talk about custody like a business. We vowed to be honest with Leo as he got older. We set boundaries about social media. We texted my parents that we needed them to hold space, not opinions. The weeks turned into negotiations. Michael filed. Ben talked to a lawyer and said he wanted to be part of Leo's life, but not to disrupt. He said he didn't want custody. He wanted to know his son and support him. He said he would be calm, that he understood the stakes of a 5-year-old's life. In court, the judge asked the only question that mattered. What is best for the child? Michael spoke first, steady but raw. He listed the things he'd done. He paused when he said he didn't know if he could forgive me, but that he knew he loved Leo and wanted to protect him. Ben spoke softly about surprise and responsibility, and how he wanted to be a steady presence, not a storm. I sat there and felt both relief and grief wash through me like tides. The judge ruled in favor of joint custody arrangements that prioritized stability. Michael would retain primary custody because Leo had lived with him for the last 3 years under the mental map of him as father. Ben would have set visitation and be on the records as biological father. We all had to take parenting classes. The judge said stern things about secrecy and the moral weight of truth. After the court, Michael and I sat in the parking lot and didn't speak for a long time. He drove away with a box of Our Old Life. I drove home with Leo asleep in the back and felt like I had kept him, but lost something else. Months went by and the new routine felt clunky but possible. Ben showed up at first awkwardly parked 2 streets away and came into supervised visits with a folding chair and then later with a cooler of juice for the kids. Michael and Ben met once for coffee because the judge insisted we try and keep it adult first. They didn't hug. They shook hands like men who had recognized mutual loss and decided to behave like grown-ups. Leo adapted. He always adapts. Kids do. He called Michael Dad. He called Ben Ben. He called me Mom. He learned to pack 2 toothbrushes for weekends. He asked 1,000 practical questions about genetics that made me laugh and cry and answer as honestly as a 5-year-old can understand. My marriage didn't survive. The bed that used to hum with shared warmth was a long, cold thing, and we both chose our child's stability over pretending. We split the house, split our friends, split the ornaments. We didn't hate each other with venom. We just couldn't patch what secrecy had torn in both of us. The best part, unexpectedly, was truth. It was ugly and it was clean in a way. We could set rules and boundaries based on facts, not fear. Ben became a scheduled presence, and then slowly, more than that, Michael stayed engaged, and sometimes surprised me by the tenderness he still offered. We never went back to the naive idea that blood is the only thing that makes a parent. It turned out parenthood is construction daily, deliberate, sometimes boring work. I learned that secrets have a cost far beyond the one who keeps them. I learned that honesty can be destructive in the short term and restorative in the long term. I learned that a family can be reassembled in ways that don't look like the original blueprint but still hold a child's life steady. The DNA test changed everything. It was the end of what I had thought life would be. But it also cut away the rot so something new could take root. I kept Leo, and I kept pieces of the life I loved. I also kept a promise to him. No more lies, no matter how small. We moved forward with more hands than before, more complicated and more honest, and for Leo, that was enough.